Hello, YouTube. Here is another enigma from the mists of time, from the lands of Eurasia. But this enigma is tangible. Dnipro is a large city and industrial center, as well as the capital of the Dnipropetrovsk province, situated in central Ukraine. Despite the close proximity to the Ukrainian-Russian war in the region of Donbass and having suffered from the Russian missile attacks, Dnipro remains a beautiful city with plenty of landmarks and places to see after the war, like the city's parks, gardens, and Dmytro Yavornitsky National Historical Museum. And also there is the Museum of History, the Organ and Chamber Music, Church House, the Taras Shevchenko Park, the City Circus, and many others. But it's the Dmytro Yavornitsky National Historical Museum of Dnipro, or Dniprovский национальный историчный музей имени Дмитра Яворницького. It's a museum established in that city in 1848 by Andrei Faber, local governor. Its permanent collection consists of 283,000 objects, from ancient Paleolithic implements to display units of World War II. National Historical Museum has 9 exhibition complexes. The archaeological department is particularly rich. The museum has a large collection of stone Baba figures, and I'll explain what the word means. Among its notable objects are the Kurgan stela, the Kernevsivsky idol, and also a vast collection of Kazakh antiquities. Stone Baba, Kamyana Baba in Ukrainian. It's an anthropomorphic stone statue, 1 to 4 meters in height, found in the steppe or grasslands belt of Europe and Asia, from the Dniester River in the west to Mongolia in the east, commonly used as grave markers, as some hypothesize. The Babi, in plural, or Babas, were connected with the cults of the dead among nomadic peoples, according to scientists. Those erected in Ukraine were left by Scythian and Sarmatian tribes of the 7th to 4th century BC and by the Turkic peoples of the 6th to 13th century, particularly the Kumans, or as they're locally known, Palavtsi. The figures are commonly in standing or sitting positions. In the steppe Ukraine, most of the Babi are female figures that differ from their Asiatic counterparts in their more complex and varied dress. A large number of these monuments have been preserved in museums throughout Ukraine. In general, mysterious idols, which are commonly called stone Babas or stone women, are found throughout the former USSR, in the Baltic states, Ukraine, and Russia. Especially numerous and interesting are the Polovtsian women left on the Slavic land by ancient nomadic tribes. The Dnipro Historical Museum has a very interesting and incredibly large collection of such Babi, or women. Scientists of the past centuries attributed these giants to anyone, the Huns, the Scythians, and the Celts. And only in the last century, thanks to the work of historian and archaeologist Veselovsky, it was possible to establish that it was the Palavtsi, or the Kipchaks, who left the stone women behind. According to Chinese sources, the earliest Kipchaks, Sars, Shari, Xianto, the Yellowheads, roamed in the 4th to 7th centuries in the steppes between the Mongolian Altai and the eastern Tian Shan. They were actually called among the 15 Uyghur tribes. According to the Muslim geographer of Iranian origin, Ibn Khordadbeh, who lived from 820 to 913, in his book Book of Ways and Countries, written in 847, it is said that the Kipchaks, along with the Kimaks, Gus, Jikils, Turgesh, Azgish, Karluks, Halajais, and Kyrgyz, are residents of the country of the Turks to Guz, and is the most extensive of the Turkic countries, which borders with As-Sin and At-Tubat. According to religion, the Kipchaks were pagans and worshipped stone idols Balbals, but at the time of the Golden Horde, their overwhelming majority who lived on the territory of the Horde state converted to Islam. From the 11th to the 14th centuries, these Turkic-speaking tribes actively mastered the Dnipro steppes, having come here from Asia. So there are especially many idols in these parts. On both banks of the Dnipro river were the largest settlements of foreigners. They called their new homeland Dasht-i-Kipchak, the land of the Polovtsi. And, of course, many burial mounds had appeared in the area. The words Baba, or Baba, and Balvan, or blockhead in English, originated in those ancient times. As one hypothesis has it, from the Iranian Palvan, a hero, and Balbal, a stone with an inscription. In Ukraine, these women were also called Mamai. By the way, why exactly stone women? After all, these statues depict men, although sometimes there are women. According to the sources that have come down to us, it is known that the Polovtsi called the stone statues Balbal, which to them meant idol. Well, those who came to the steppe after them for simplicity, all the idols, regardless of gender, were called Babi, women, and sometimes Balvani, or blockheads. And by the way, if you see my video about the Arctic island of Vaigach, there is the Balvanskaya mountain. So how the name came about, very interesting. The connections we find. Some scientists suggest that Baba is connected with the Turkish word Vava, ancestor, grandfather. So ridiculously nicknamed Balbals, they went down in history. See how many words from ancient languages you learned today? But let's look at the wrath of the sun. Scientists are inclined to believe that the stone idols were not objects of pagan religious worship, that is, they did not personify the deities to whom one should pray. They were installed at burial grounds and depicted ancestors. However, outwardly, all the idols, both male and female, had features not of specific deceased people, but of deities or folk heroes. But again, these were not specific but generalized images. There's a very interesting hypothesis that reminds me of the stories of ancient battles of giants against deities, like in Greek myths and similar ones around the world, in well-known and in very obscure lands. And I found some very obscure mentions from places around this globe that very few people have visited. One of the ancient folk legends about the origin of the Polovtsian idols of the Dnipro steppes was published at the end of the 19th century in the publication Historical Bulletin by researcher Dmytro Yavornitsky. According to it, once the giants who lived on earth got angry at the sun and began to spit on it, for which it turned them into stones. You can interpret this as celestial battles, as giants living on the face of the earth using very interesting weapons described as, spitting at the sun, maybe celestial space stations. And the powerful weapons that were used on those giants and turned them into stones kind of remind you of a biblical story. Well, as a rule, idols were placed as limiters of ancient sanctuaries in which the Polovtsi performed memorial and funeral rites. These sacred places were fumigated with the help of smoke from burning aromatic herbs and sacrificial animals baked on a fire. There is also a hypothesis that the idols standing by the roads could also serve as geographical landmarks for passing tribes. Not all researchers believe that the creators of these stone women many centuries ago installed on the steppe mounds of the south of Russia and Ukraine are the Polovtsi. Some researchers have suspected Sarmatians, Huns, Mongols, the Pechenegs, Bulgarians of the Volga, or the ancestors of modern Cossacks of making these statues. By itself, the presence of such ancient historical sites on the river Don in Russia indicates that there was a sufficiently developed culture in these places 1,000 years ago, which left behind numerous objects of material heritage. And by the way, those of you interested in paranormal phenomena of the Volga regions in the around the 10th century should see my video, and I'll attach to it, of the Ibn Fadlan's travels to that land and what he had observed in the sky over the land. Very interesting celestial battle. Very well preserved material. And I recall how difficult it was for me to get the Russian language translation of his travels. But there is a catch to it, and I won't go into it right now. You can see my video. I think you'll like it. And yet, most scientists believe that the statues were created by the Polovtsi. This is evidenced by various historical details, weapons and clothing of stone women, characteristic of representatives of the vanished people. It is interesting to note that the Franciscan monk William de Rubruck, who visited the Mongol Empire in 1253-1254, wrote in his famous work, Journey to the Eastern Countries, Comans, so in Western Europe they call the Polovtsi, have a large hill built over the deceased, and a statue is erected to him, facing east and holding a cup in his hand in front of his navel. Therefore, many researchers believe that the stone women were installed on mounds where there were burials of representatives of the Polovtsi ancestral nobility or famous warriors. The Azerbaijani poet Nizami treated the Polovtsian culture with great respect and attention. After all, his wife was a Polovets. It was he who once again crossing the great steppe and watching the sacrifices of the Polovtsi to stone idols, immortalized them in poetic lines. A mysterious sculpture in the years of yore, the veil was lowered on the beauties of the steppe, and now in those steppes, behind their blue fog, you'll meet with an unconfined talisman. Around it your gaze will see a marveling gaze arrow shafts like grasses by sleepy lakes. But even though there are no arrows striking eagles, there is no count. Here you will see eagles, you will hear the noise of their takeoff, and the tribes of the Kipchaks come here, and Kipchak's back bends before the idol. A traveler on foot will come, or a mounted one will come, conquers any idol of their ancestors. The rider hesitates before it, and holding the horse, he sticks an arrow bending down between the grasses. Every shepherd who drives the flock knows that it is necessary to leave a sheep in front of the idol. From afar, the stone idol seemed like a big stone, but when approaching, Nizami always involuntarily felt awe. A formidable, stern warrior stared intently at him. Fortunately, his stone sword in its scabbard was not dangerous at all. The sun was slowly sinking over the edge of the earth. The steppe turned purple, and the mounds with idols seemed otherworldly. It was as if nature was erasing the colors, waiting to enhance the mystery, to confirm their mystical power. And the formidable warriors in the twilight smiled broadly. They are alive? The unexpected discovery did not frighten Nizami. He felt that there was no evil in those idols. Many centuries later, the Russian poet Khlebnikov will experience a similar shock, and in the poem Stone Woman will leave a mysterious line: stands with a mobile smile. The poet Nizami wanted to tell his descendants about his delight, mystical discovery, and the strange rituals of the Polovtsi. It was the 12th century, the time of the highest flowering of the Polovtsian art and stone sculpture. Having settled many lands, the Polovtsians always left behind mounds and stone women. The most valuable thing that this mysterious people possessed was a mystical testament to others that after them they would live in the great steppe. Scientists also argue about the purpose for which the ancient masters created these strange statues. Some believe that the stone women were images of deities worshipped by the locals. Others see these statues as some kind of supernatural patterns of specific genera or families. Still others respected ancestors or grandparents. The fourth are the slain enemies, who are now mystically connected with their victors and must provide them with support from the spirit world. The Kazakhs have their own legends, and legends explaining the origin of the ancient statues. And I'm speaking primarily of the Don Kazakhs. Obviously, the ancestors of modern Kazakhs considered statues depicting male warriors to be mythical heroes, and female statues were perceived by the inhabitants of the Don steppes as pagan fertility deities. At least such a conclusion can be drawn from another group of legends, believing that the petrified heroes are able to endow a warrior with their mighty strength, and the goddesses of fertility can affect the harvest. The Kazakhs have been worshipping statues since ancient times. They even believe that ancient statues punish people for disrespectful attitude to them and other unseemly deeds. There was even an opinion among some Kazakhs that stone women were created by the goddess of family and home. She endowed the statues with the souls of people who died from unhappy love and instructed them to protect peace and harmony in the life of every married couple. Therefore, stone women are able to give people happiness if they are well appeased. At the same time, the ancient spirits of the statues also punish everyone who separates or quarrels lovers. The ancestors of modern Kazakhs also believed that ancient statues have a wonderful healing power, and various wounds heal next to them faster than usual. In the era of Middle Ages, with its mystical taboos, has long passed, and already in the 18th century, people, far from superstitious fears, began to use stone statues for their own purposes. At first, they were installed at the crossroads of trade routes instead of mileposts and direction signs. Then they began to be dragged around the yards altogether. Some stone women were crushed, and their fragments were used in construction. Other idols were more lucky. They were installed near private homes, in parks and recreation areas. Some statues ended up in museums or became part of the urban landscape. The rest just lie there, dumped from mounds, on tops of which geodetic or telecommunication equipment is now located. So the cell towers replace stone women. However, echoes of ancient beliefs still persist among the people. Some people in whose settlements there are stone women who wash and decorate them before the holidays, thereby wishing to appease the ancient spirits. Those stone women, or kamene babi, gathered in the courtyard of the museum. While the first stone women appeared in the former Dnipropetrovsk, and before that Yekaterinoslav, and now Dnipro Historical Museum in the middle of the 19th century. Now it has 100 statues. Most of them are Polovtsian. These stone women were preserved by a miracle because in recent centuries, due to the active development of cattle breeding, plowing of land, and the construction of dwellings, ancient figures standing in the steps along the roads were often destroyed by local residents. In particular, they were broken as symbols of paganism. However, there were also those who, realizing the historical value of the idols, did not touch them, or they even took them home as souvenirs. All these idols are quite primitive. According to some description, the face, chest, arms are depicted only schematically, and the legs are depicted thick and short, so that the figure standing on a hill does not look distorted from afar. A distinctive feature of almost every gigantic woman is the iconic libation vessel that she holds in her hand. Polovtsian craftsmen used gray sandstone as the material to create the idols. The exhibits are right in the courtyard of the museum, and this gathering of idols is called the Polovtsian Women's Park. For the winter, they're usually taken indoors. The museum is temporarily closed because of the war, after the Russian Federation invaded neighboring Ukraine. I am sure it will be reopened soon, and when you visit independent Ukraine, you can gaze, you can look at the ancient mysteries displayed in the Museum of the Ukrainian river city of Dnipro. I thank you for your attention to my work, and I ask you if you can support my research and discoveries. Please do so. You will find the information in the description to this video. And please like my videos, and please tell others about my channel.